Item Number, SCP-4036. Object Class, Keter. Special Containment Procedures, SCP-4036 is to be surrounded by a perimeter covering 120,000 km² maintained by the Foundation Navy in collaboration with United Nations peacekeeping troops in order to prevent any SCP-4036-1 instances or trade coming in or out of the perimeter. If objects or persons attempt to penetrate the perimeter, they are to be neutralized, and their remains relocated to Site-004 in Indonesia. Foundation operatives are to infiltrate political, military, religious, and cultural institutions on SCP-4036. These operatives are to acquire information on ongoing affairs, potential operations against the Foundation, and subvert potential operations within SCP-4036. At all times, at least 2% of the population of SCP-4036 is to be made up of Foundation operatives or SCP-4036-1 instances loyal to the Foundation. In the case of a mass-scale military operation against the Foundation from SCP-4036, Operation Black Lily is to be enacted. Operation Black Lily is to only be enacted in the possibility that, a. SCP-4036 can no longer be contained without an XE-lifted veil scenario, b. that large areas of land will not be returned to their respective countries, and c. SCP-4036 will rout Foundation forces in such a way that it leaves the Foundation completely defenseless. At the time, the President of SCP-4036 attitude towards the Foundation has been conciliatory, lacking any hostility characteristic of previous administrations or governments. However, due to the current atmosphere regarding the Foundation, and the possibility that the President will be ousted before any permanent solution can be established, diplomatic relationships have remained the same. Special containment procedures have remained in place in the possibility that an anti-Foundation president and legislative group take control over the governmental apparatus. Description: SCP-4036 is a small unitary theocratic republic located in an archipelago in the southeastern region of Polynesia, 300 km in radius and 100,000 km² in area. SCP-4036 citizens refer to it as the Adited Republic of Polynesia. It was previously under the autocratic rule of POI 432, Norman Taylor, from 1857 to 1862 before his assassination by Foundation-backed groups in the region. Prior to this, SCP-4036 was highly militaristic, combining industrial-age technology with biological weaponry to create a mobilized military. SCP-4036 had controlled around 30% of Polynesia, with the majority of its holdings in sparsely populated locations. Current authorities of SCP-4036 have disavowed its founder, POI 432, and previous imperialist ambitions. SCP-4036 population is primarily anomalous, with current estimates ranging from 50% to 80%. Government statistics state around 64% of the population is anomalous, although due to a lack of peer review, it is unknown if this is representative of the island's population. The population is primarily capable of flesh manipulation. SCP-4036 state religion is Sarkicism, with official statistics claiming that all of SCP-4036-1 are adherents to Sarkicism, despite there being small Christian and Islamic groups within the country. Freedom of religion is allowed under the Constitution, although most non-Sarkic instances worship in secret to prevent social and political ostracization. SCP-4036 society is primarily rural, with a few central urban areas, where the majority of the population lives. These urban locations vary from standard concrete to biological buildings. Economically, SCP-4036 is built around animal and human agriculture, manufacturing, and tobacco farming. Trade is impossible due to ongoing containment of SCP-4036. SCP-4036's government controls 60% of the economy, while the rest is owned either communally or by individuals. SCP-4036 government is divided into 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. The legislative branch is divided into three houses: the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the Karcist Council. The House of Representatives currently comprises around 100 representatives, each one representing 100 people. The Senate is composed of 10 delegates, each representing 1,000 people. Both houses are chosen by majority vote per district. The Karcist Council is a group of 20 individuals representing the main religious governing body, the Church of the Republic, of which all citizens are members. This house is made up of individuals hand-selected by the Karcist. A bill can be made into law in one of two ways: A. Be approved of by 60% of both the Senate and House of Representatives, or B. Be approved of by the Karcist Council with a majority vote, even if one house unanimously rejects the proposal. The executive branch is made up of a president, elected by popular vote, and their cabinet, both serving 5-year terms with no chance for re-election. All cabinet positions must be approved of by the Karcist Council in majority vote or by 60% of both the Senate and House. The judicial branch makes up the Supreme Court of the Republic, composed of 6 posts, all for life. This is made up of appointees chosen by the President and approved of by a simple majority in the Senate and House. SCP-4036 Society is a combination of proto-Sarkic beliefs and modernity, with a heavy focus on religious and civic patriotism, and modern technology. Religiosity of Grand Karcist Ion is highly valued by the public, along with technological innovation. Electronic and digital products are popular amongst SCP-4036-1, with the majority of them coming from either smuggling or bootlegging. However, biological machinery is also used by the populace, primarily among lower classes. Biological machinery is often viewed as inferior to digital and electronic technology, and is usually used when non-biological options are not available. Often, lower classes are incapable of buying products, resorting to crafting their own. While social stratification exists in SCP-4036 Society, every individual is entitled to adequate healthcare and food. Healthcare is, comparatively, the cheapest in the entire world. However, this is most likely due more to the abundance of biological manipulation and crafting among the population than to any inherent superiority of the government healthcare system. Participation in the armed forces or civil duty is mandatory once a citizen reaches the age of 19. Individuals must either spend time in the armed forces for 2 years before being discharged, or participate in civil duty for 16 months. Most citizens choose the latter option. Patriotic and religious feelings often coincide with one another in the cultural depictions of SCP-4036. Clavigar Sarn is often heavily associated with Lady Adidam, the personification of SCP-4036. Prayer often occurs directly after a salute to the flag of SCP-4036. Every president of SCP-4036 has cited a strong belief in Sarkicism. The majority of SCP-4036-1 hold the belief that an individual cannot be a citizen of SCP-4036 without also being a Sarkic. The military of SCP-4036 often uses the seal of Clavigar Orok, the Clavigar of war and domination. Currently, SCP-4036 has been contained to around 300 islands, and not allowed to expand beyond these borders. While no official treaty or cooperative agreement has been established between the Foundation and SCP-4036, there have been no further attempts by either side to cease the stalemate. Person of Interest File Number 432. Legal Name, Norman Taylor. Aliases used, President Taylor. Associated Groups of Interest, Polynesian Sarkic. Associated Persons of Interest, POI 182, William Walker, POI 433, Ahashi Hakagoro, POI 431, John Taylor. Reason for monitoring, POI having violated, A. American Neutrality Acts and, B. having set up an illegal state called the Adited Republic of Polynesia along with various other filibusters and mercenaries. Current course of action, not applicable. Former course of action, neutralize POI before POI can attempt to either disrupt colonial interests in Polynesia or, under more severe circumstances, attempt to take over vast quantities of land. Priority, previously, high. Currently, not applicable. Status, previously, President of an illegal republic, henceforth referred to as SCP-4036. Currently, dead. Background information: prior to POI's relationship with SCP-4036 and other filibusters, POI developed an impactful, if short, relationship with POI-182, William Walker, in 1853, after POI-182 was attempting to recruit mercenaries to create the independent Federal Republic, Republic of Sonora, October 1853 to May 1854, and the Republic of Lower California, October 1853 to January 1854, as slave colonies in the region. However, by 1854 the relationship had declined between POI-432 and POI-182, eventually leading in POI-432 to split from POI-182. By 1855, POI had heard various stories about a virgin island in the southern area of Polynesia, filled with resources such as sugar cane, tobacco, and gold. Notably, this region purportedly contained a population that had very little, if any, contact with European explorers and was in the eyes of most American filibusters at the time servile in nature. In 1856, POI wrote to his brother, POI-431, John Taylor, who operated a private shipbuilding and trading service at the time, asking for a variety of ships for the journey. POI-431 delivered the ships at a reduced charge for POI-432, but only under the condition that he never contact him again. By 1857, POI hired around 300 mercenaries and filibusters to come with him in the total of 10 ships, outfitted with cannons and 1 year's worth of food for the entire crew. POI then left for the island. It should be noted that POI had no direct evidence of SCP-4036 existence, as it only existed in rumor in the California and Nevada territories. The following documents have been ordered sequentially in the order that they were written.
Walker ruined Sonora and Baja, and is currently ruining Nicaragua. He is an amoral slaver, who believes himself better than all others. I tried to force him in the right direction, but he would not listen to reason. This time, things will be sufficiently different. We have weaponry, we are away from normal civilization, and away from the Americas. Of course, other colonial powers are nearby, but as long as we do not anger them or gain their attention, all things will turn out well. Walker was crude in his presidential style, only ever focusing on slavery, that horrific, barbaric institution. It was a fantasy, as if they would be set atop the aristocracy, instead of a rich Tennessean. It is quite crude and amoral venture, in my view. A yellow man, an anthropologist who has accompanied me on my voyage for the sake of easy communication with these tribesmen, came to me in private confidence, to warn me about his perceived fears over this project of mine. I told him that such fears were not justified. We were both Republicans, we both believed slavery was immoral. Did he not agree that it was the job of more civilized people like us and the Japanese to bring civilization to these poor, barbaric people? To provide them the tools and the resources to fight back against tyranny? Exploitation of the weak and powerless is inherent to the human condition, cancelable just for being more pleasing in the eyes of our Lord and Savior. 4 people on our planet and we have our first murder, the first time blood was spilled upon the ground in the pursuit of petty revenge. It is our job to give these peoples some sort of equal standing, to have people defend them against exploitation. The yellow man agreed and went back to work. We reached the island. I saw a woman in the tree line matching the descriptions of the natives. She wore flesh-like things on her body, covering her below the waist. I'd almost say she was the living image of beauty herself, if the abhorrent symbols didn't dot her face and body. Children destroying their bodies for the sake of barbaric culture, we made camp here, and plan on keeping camp here for as long as necessary. I believe these natives would make fine workers, if we gain the friendship of their cultural institutions. Loyalty to these institutions brings sacrifice for the greater good. Great civilizations are built on the back of good workers. To the east of this campsite, I found a small patch of dirt with queer protrusions jutting from it. It was hairy, but not like plant fuzz, almost animal-like in its physicality. I felt an instinctual urge to pull on it, to see what there was. I ordered the men to help me when I could not get it out myself, and together we managed to rip the plant out of the ground. The protrusion was not a plant but a tail, the tail of a large swine. We had ripped its tail off. How such a swine came into existence on this geographically isolated island, I am unsure. As we got up, we stared at the creature. It squealed in pain trying to get itself up and walk, but it fell back on its side, and continued to bleed and whimper. As it lay dying, I drew my pistol and killed the poor thing. I looked over the corpse after killing it. It seemed fully grown. A scout team has returned to our camp, 4 men dead and 3 more injured. They testified that, while searching for natives, a large, 15-foot-tall beast has come from the greenery on the beach side of the island. Bullets did nothing against the bone shields. I ordered my ships to scout the beach side, searching for the beast. Considering the circumstances, I believed it prudent. The beast attacked our camp, slaughtering 21 of our men. It towered at least 19 feet, with the majority of its face surrounded by yellowy bone. This creature was foreign to me. It had the torso of a mammoth, the head of a horse, and the claws of bear. Its torso was covered in thick white bone, and its claws being made entirely of flesh. They morphed and changed, like liquid metal. It tore through men, slashing them apart like factory equipment, with giant long tendrils popping out of nowhere, only to be reabsorbed back into its body. Its flesh almost looked like a spider's web, interconnecting into itself, layering on top of one another. But it almost seemed to be independent of the beast, trying to force itself into 1,000 different directions, but being stamped down by the superior force. Some of our men got stuck inside. Just touching it is enough to get stuck. An arm becomes your entire body. I can still hear the screams as those men were consumed inside the mass of flesh, as muffled as they were. I felt its eyes bore into me as our cannons tore through its flesh, leaving large holes in its body. It still twitches, sometimes. I need to lay down or else I'll rip this page out. I plan on going to the middle of the island, and seeing if there are any natives there. I will take exactly 100 armed men there and see if we can come to some sort of agreement with the natives. I wish to make good on my promise to the anthropologist and avoid hurting as many as possible. I killed a chieftain today. Or, what I presume was a chieftain. He ordered us to lay down our weapons, at least from what the anthropologist told us. I shoot him in the head and he falls to the ground without a single yelp or whimper of pain. Some ran in fear, others too fearful to run, of which we captured and took back to camp. The anthropologist and I hate seeing the poor creatures in pain, but this is their fate for the time being. We talked to one of them, a boy no older than 10. He thanked us for killing the chieftain, for his rule was immoral and cruel. I received similar testimonies from the others of this chieftain's cruelty. We told him we were going to help them and make their lives better. I then asked him about the beast, and the boy sighed. He told us that it was made by the village. The chieftain, in response to seeing that outsiders appeared on the island, ordered the entire tribe to group in the main village and help construct a guardian. This process took the majority of their energy, but not 3 days later, the chieftain ordered the young village men to come with him and to fight. The beast had been killed. He said the chieftain said we were going to kill the men and violate the women. The anthropologist took me aside. He said that these villagers were an anomaly. I concurred, as it was not normal for people to craft flesh, but he said even aside from that, this shouldn't be possible. When I asked why, he responded that this language was a combination of European and Polynesian languages. Along with that, these villagers didn't look like Polynesians, as their skin was light-toned. Unless they traveled across the world to this island. Some of the men brought us to the village. It couldn't have been more than 300 men and women. Their houses weren't made of wood or stone, but masses of flesh which bulged and moaned. These were made from the bodies of the dead, as a way to make sure their deaths were not worthless. They wore wet flesh on themselves, which, to me, seemed more disgusting than the houses themselves. Most of the village was terrified of the chieftain, not even attempting to go back for the body, fearful that it wouldn't be dead. Some were terrified of the new arrivals, while others asked the elder, who graciously suggested they wait before jumping to conclusions about their new guests. The majority followed the elders, the sacred group who had, until very recently, led their tribe. Homelessness was non-existent. They seemed to have no outsiders or undesirables, whether it be in a caste system such as India, or economic status, such as in Europe and the rest of the Americas. Men and women are not separated based on sex, but based on their nature. Men and women hunt, men and women search for food. They mostly subsist on meat, but fruits exist on this island as well. I saw families rush from their houses to some of the men we captured and smothered them with kisses and hugs and cries that they were okay and safe. I saw a man cry in front of another, barely standing up. I asked Tahashi what was happening. He said that they were husbands. I wished to know nothing more. I asked some others if there was a village elder. They said there were once many, but all of them were slaughtered by the chieftain. Originally, the island had been run by wise old men who knew the religion, studied their practice since birth, and had their oral history since the beginning of their tribe, many thousands of years ago. The chieftain, originally an apprentice of one of them, rose up and killed them along with the other apprentices. He mastered the arts of crafting flesh at an early age, and could form entire beasts in an instant. I asked if there was anyone else who could give me the history of these people. There was one last remaining elder, the chieftain's father. When I questioned them on where they acquired the large mass of flesh, they told me that, in the quest to make the beast, they had used up all their reserves. Seeing an opportunity to make right with the community, I told them that we had a large supply of food on our ships, and that, if they needed to, we would provide them with as much food as possible. However, I needed an agreement from the leader of this tribe. They would agree to whatever proposal I had if the elder did so, who, according to them, would always put their own interests aside for the good of the village. We told him our offer, which he accepted, and thanked us for being so generous. He hugged us, and went out of the tent and called for the entire village, saying that the men would be generous and give us food as they planted their own. Our men transported food to them. One complained to me that they were giving away their food. I agreed, but told him that this was necessary to gain the trust. Then, once this occurred, we would be able to civilize them. We have established our capital city around the village. We have been training some of the hunters to hunt with our rifles, and they teach us their homeland and their agriculture. They place a newborn creature into the ground and bury it. The soil accelerates their growth. The elder says this is a sign from Ion that the island is one of his many holy lands. They planted newborn swines into the ground and will wait a couple months for them to develop. Until then, hunting other creatures, such as birds and fish, will be enough to satisfy them. I must remember to get cows and chickens and normal pigs from my newfound supplier. Swine is an excellent dish, but not something civilized people should feed on. I had a thought many nights ago. What if I am meant to bring these people an empire? It is a strange thought, but, considering everything that has gone on in the past months, is it so strange to think this? Is there truth to this? Or, at the very least, elements of truth in it? I must think on this. I went into the mines today, and these mines definitely have gold. It could probably go down many miles, down below the crust of the earth. I come from a gold family, it's in my bones. Even my first job was mining gold, so I know there's gold here. My men whisper of leaving with the gold. I cannot allow that to happen. I must create an economy here, to strengthen ourselves here. Assuming I have enough here to operate the mines, I must have others work on creating currency. Gold is humanity's oldest currency, but these people know nothing of money. They don't even have a barter economy, instead sharing with one another. I have heard of socialism amongst the Europeans, and this is the closest I can think to socialism. With few resources, it forces cooperation amongst them. It's beautiful in a way, but not conducive to a civilized society, at least in the economic sense. I need to solve the labor crisis before my men forsake me. I asked the elder a hypothetical question. Would it be possible for a human child to be planted in the ground, and for a full-grown adult come in its place? He looked at me strangely, but he answered yes, it is, but is generally viewed as inhumane, as it destroys the lifespan of the child. While it is said in the past that in times of disaster children will be planted, this is only done when no other possibility is available. He then asked me why I was asking such odd questions, and I told him what I was planning. He seemed shocked at first, horrified even, but then I described to him our future plans. I told him I thought I was to be the bringer of the empire and that, with our weaponry and resources, we bring it about in quick order. We brought him to the gold mine and the ships and showed him the maps of the world. I told him that together with these people's innate abilities, we could bring the entire world under our reign. I described how commerce worked, leaving out references to competition, as I know it would offend his cultural sensibilities. When I described to him how every nation on this planet had this, and the necessity of democratic institutions, he seemed more amicable to my plans. He approved of our plan, but told us to make it swift and to make sure the parents do not witness this. I promised him this. He told the members of the community that it is a moral imperative to start producing offspring as soon as possible. Ahashi looked at me with disdain throughout the whole procedure. It's been nearly 3 months since my last entry and I feel sick for what I've done. I feel unclean. Nearly every woman on the island is pregnant. I feel disgusting. I cannot go into the village without feeling disgusting. I feel immoral. I feel evil. I can see their faces. I know what I am. I beg for Christ's forgiveness and I know he reviles me as well. I threw my Bible out into the sea because I could feel it berating me. I could feel it berating me for what I've done. But I need to do this. I need to civilize these people. If I don't, who will? The British? The Americans? Any other horrible, immoral power that slaughters its people? If I leave, will the same befall these children of nature? I pray to a God whose back is turned on me. A child waved to me today and I cried, because I know that child's brother will be the first one in the ground. I threw up. I have sinned. I am sin. It has been 6 months and I can't bring myself to reflect on my thoughts anymore. Occasionally I'm plagued by nightmares of children rising from the ground and gnawing on me. They're popping out of the ground and grabbing me and bringing me under. I see myself having dirt flung on me and they're still grabbing with their tiny little hands and crying for their mother, and I know I'm bleeding and I'm crying out for God, but God has turned his back on me. It is done. The sin is done. I told some of the men to get their guns. Ahashi as well. He seemed disgusted at himself. He talked to himself in many languages I didn't recognize. I had never seen him this way before. The other men began to get nervous. The elder of the village told me most of the children were already born, anywhere from a couple weeks to multiple months, all of sufficient age to be used. The elder had performed his part. I then ordered my men to go into the tents and take the children and to not shoot. I had to look away for most of it. Most of the children were ripped from their mothers' and fathers' arms as they cried. Others tried to stab at us, but were beaten into submission. One of our men broke down. He went into the tent and saw a mother with her bone knife. She held onto her baby as tight as possible, tears running down her face. She cried to Ion, for him to save her son from these monsters. The man began to cry himself. Jethro lost his son and daughter in the blood disputes of Appalachia. He couldn't bring himself to fight back, and broke down. We had to have one of our men bring him in and beat the mother into submission. She screamed for Ion, her savior, for forgiveness of whatever sin she committed to deserve this punishment. She begged, she screamed, eventually taking one of our guns and shot our man. We lost the child in the scuffle. She was put down. The elder was attempting to console the village, who had begged him for assistance. He wept, but told them it was for the greater good, for Ion told him that the Empire would come in time due to this. Until then, do not resist, for it may anger Ion. By the end of the nightmare, we had over 300 children. We began the process of burying them. I still hear their cries, feeling the dirt enter their mouths and enter their bodies and lungs and stomach, and everywhere else. They will be birthed soon. According to legend, the arm will be what signifies the second birth. 2 weeks have passed and the men are still disturbed at the events. Many seek to go home. Others cry of nightmares. I feel something in my stomach weighing me down. I have this revolver next to me. I imagine myself putting the revolver in my mouth and cocking the hammer and shooting. May God take me from my mortal coil and rip me apart. I am a liar and disgusting fraud to all men. Ahashi never speaks to me anymore, only sleeping and occasionally eating. The nightmares only get worse. They're not screaming anymore, but whispering. They're whispering about what they will do to me. Hundreds of voices whispering in the black dirt around me, holding onto me and describing my death. I will be ripped apart by Ion himself. I am no more civilized than the barbarians I am trying to save. God, please forgive me. I ruined the island. God, I wish I could turn back. Turn back and pretend none of this happened. But if I leave now, the men will be angry, for all their time and effort is ruined. Not only that, but the island now relies on my supplies. It won't be for many months, if not years, that their food stock will be brought back up to its previous circumstances. If I do, they're all going to starve. If I leave, I will ruin these people. Shown that the white man can't be trusted and forever snap the connection between us and them. No, I can't let that happen. I need to stay. I need to. I am a monster. I am unforgivable. I am sin itself. I'm so sorry. It has been 3 months and there has been a second birth. I stepped foot onto the pastures in the middle of the island for the first time in 3 months. Limbs dotted the landscape. Full-grown adult arms jutting out of the ground, covered in dirt and sunburnt. Some of my men have already started pulling them out of the ground. The elder tells me it takes a while before full humans wake up. The women were placed into the care of the village, as they are necessary for future reproduction, and the men dropped off at the shipyard for future mining. Barracks have been built for them, and they will be taught how to mine and fashion coinage for the island. We will repeat the process. I have written my constitution. I lifted many aspects from the American one. Most of the men, despite many reservations with me, will vote for me in the election. If I let the villagers vote, I will certainly lose. These men know that without me they'll certainly die without the perceived friendship with Ahashi. Ahashi did not respond to me when I said I wrote the constitution. Not that I blame him. I told the elder that I won the presidency and he congratulated me. He then asked how the second birthers were. I told them the mines were working at an increased efficiency and that we are creating the first batch of currency. We opened the stores and gave each villagers enough coin to buy a couple of things. We told them that if they wished to continue this, they would need to accept the following: to have their tent destroyed and replaced with wooden houses. Many of them rejected this as an insult to their culture, and that it would make them selfish and self-destructive. We told them it was either the house or the stores. Many accepted, although many of the older members still refused. By the end of the day, every tent was destroyed and construction began. Many of these men and women are hard workers. Gold production is increasing, and even small farms are beginning. But yet I come across another problem: I need to rid these people of their collective farms. The collective farm makes it difficult to encourage enterprise, because one must always think the collective soil. However, I decided to give the elder plans about this, and he told me, if it meant the empire would be created faster, so be it. I am sin. Today I put down a revolt in the streets. When I announced my plan for the farms to be split amongst the best farmers in the community, They universally rejected it. They yelled at me. Then they began to scream. Then they began to attack my men. One of my men, Henry, began to panic and so drew his pistol and shot 2 men. This further inflamed the violence. I called Ahashi to quell the violence, but there was nothing he could do. They burned down the store, stealing things from inside, claiming that it was a violation of their culture. Some even tried stealing our guns. I called in my men and they began putting it down. Gunshots rang out in the village, eventually ending in the death of 50 people. The elder being one of them. We put the revolt down. A good fourth of our original population was slaughtered in the streets, and by my men. God forgive me for what I've done. I called them barbarians, killers, and thieves. I killed 1/3 of every man in the city, as I needed the women alive for the birthing. On the next day I took every small child in the village and buried them again. The nightmares get worse and worse, but I know one thing: I will build my empire. One bullet at a time.
History. Introduction of SCP-4036, its history, its containment, and its people. The Foundation first discovered SCP-4036 during its invasion of the northern island of British New Zealand. There were reports of an undiscovered force in Polynesia causing havoc across the smaller, sparsely populated islands in southeastern Polynesia. However, since there was no substantial proof for this, it was discarded. Upon the invasion of North Island in June of 1861, the Foundation could not ignore this call for war. Within the day of the initial invasion, the entire island fell to SCP-4036 and its force of 5,000 men, with a collective of 200 dead. After this, the Foundation declared SCP-4036 the top priority of the region. By the end of June, an international coalition of Spain, Japan, Netherlands, France, and Great Britain had been called together by the Foundation for the purposes of combating this destructive threat against the Foundation, and, to a greater extent, colonial interests in the region. With General Bo leading forces in South Island, New Zealand, the coalition began to force SCP-4036 back. However, despite conventional military wisdom suggesting otherwise, SCP-4036 forces were able to defeat multiple attempts at Foundation invasions of conquered territory. The attempted invasion of North Island failed, with over 1,000 coalition causalities, mostly Japanese and British. All attempts at gaining the few, isolated pockets SCP-4036 had control over failed, mostly due to a lack of understanding of SCP-4036 military. However, one individual, Ahashi Hakagoro, aka POI-433, knew how to help. Vice President of SCP-4036 and leader of religious affairs, he had an understanding of the culture of SCP-4036 that none could rival, even Taylor. Writing to O5-2, a friend of Ahashi before his work with SCP-4036, he offered the Foundation near unlimited information to SCP-4036 military operations, their tactics, their weakness, and, if supplied with armaments, rebel groups in the region. It was an offer the Foundation could not help but take advantage of, and the only thing Ahashi wanted was that SCP-4036-1, the population, be unharmed. The Foundation, in a remote island near the main capital of SCP-4036, delivered a variety of armaments to Ahashi and his rebel groups. However, the decisive factor was the Battle of South Island. The Battle of South Island began on October 13, when dozens of bone ships were seen on the horizon. Their hulls, made entirely of femur bones, made cannon fire near impossible. Along with eyes implanted on every part of the vessel, boarding them would also be impossible. Preparing to defend the island, General Bo gave his men the order to hold their ground. However, in the background, General Bo came up with a different plan. When the O5 Council gave him temporary Level 5 status, he had access to information a normal general would not have been privy to. One of these was Mobile Task Force Theta-01, Warhawks. Formed during the Foundation's Civil War of 1814, Theta-01 was composed of anomalous individuals. Drawn from anomalous persons of interest, staff, and SCPs, the task force was made up entirely of individuals who had proven their loyalty to the Foundation. During times of disaster, they were anything from combat operatives, medical officers, memory wipers, and spies. They were an ace in the hole. So when General Bo ordered them to destroy the fleet, they were only too glad to answer that request. With a large atomic blast from the sky, the Flesh Fleet was fried, with no mercy. By the end of 1861, SCP-4036 had been all but beaten. Not only that, it was near collapse. Ahashi, seeing an opportunity that the Battle of South Island left open, ordered his rebel groups to seize the day, and attack the capital. Within the span of 2 months, from December to January, the capital was laid to ruins. The capital, made up of over 20,000 citizens, mostly military, was reduced to 3,000 by the end of the fighting. However, despite the mass destruction, Hakagoro was able to come out the victor, declaring himself the President of the Republic, calling for elections of the House of Representatives, Senate, and for the Church to call in delegates. Taylor, realizing he had nothing left to lose, attempted one final assault on the capital. Grabbing hold of the handful of men still loyal to him, he marched on the Capitol building, ordering Hakagoro, his former comrade, to surrender, and that he would pardon him if he did. Ahashi, instead, had his handful of men slaughtered in the street, and Taylor himself gagged and placed into his own private cell. Ahashi knew that Taylor was leverage. The coalition, however, did not need leverage. Most of the population had been, thanks to Theta-01, pacified, and the damages covered up. The coalition had their colonies back and with minimal damage. It should have been sufficient. But it wasn't. The Foundation, still believing that containment had not been fulfilled, pushed the coalition to invade the main island. However, the coalition, unfamiliar with Foundation policy, were not willing to plan a full-out invasion of the island. They were not willing to test their militaries after near defeat mere months ago. Ahashi was also not willing to cooperate. He refused to allow Foundation representatives into the island, and ordered his military to arrest all Foundation officers that arrived. With no way to combat this, the Foundation resorted to containment of SCP-4036. SCP-4036 remains the Foundation's biggest failure. Modern. The following is a series of excerpts from interviews of current-day SCP-4036-1. These recordings were done under the guise of a reporter from the capital of SCP-4036. Oh yes, yeah, I speak English. I'm not the best at it, since it's usually used by the, higher ones. I think that's the correct word. Again, my English is poor, so I apologize for the incorrect word. Yes, I'm Japanese, although I have not been to that country. My father sometimes talk about it, but I, don't know anything about the culture or anything. I tend to use English sparingly. Only the city ones ever use it. We use the traditional language, the ones our ancestors used to communicate with Ion, before we were cut off. Oh yes, since we use metal, our high priest Ion cut us off from his flesh. We are wandering in the dark now. We don't use those machines. We use flesh and bones like we always have and always will use. Whenever I hold one of those things in my hand, I feel unclean in my own skin. I feel like a spirit massages my skin and scalp in a horrifically uncomfortable way. Even talking about it makes me uncomfortable. Oh, yes, many of the farmers out here don't use them, but I think it's due to their economy than their beliefs. The sewers are, if not the worst thing I've ever seen, at least up there in sheer quality of awfulness. The pipes are alive as well, you see. They grow and expand outward, and we need to encourage it to go in the right direction, you see. We cut a couple limbs off here and there. Sure, they scream and squeal, but they need to transport our waste in the right direction, you understand? But that ain't the worst part, in my opinion. The worst part are the homeless critters underneath the city. We don't bother bringing the limbs back up. The homeless just eat it back up. And yes, those pipes are filled with our waste. I do not know how desperate a man must get before eating piss and shit covered flesh, but that is desperation if I've ever seen one. The Foundation is a scourge on this planet. I find our president's rhetoric immoral and perhaps dangerous. Does he not know our history? Our past? I don't understand how he could platform on mending that relationship. It's like sticking your dick in a beehive. It might feel good for a minute or two, and then the stinging happens. It's just unpleasant the whole way round. The president? I don't keep track of what he does. Sorry, English isn't first language. I am American, I think, but I don't much about it. I know some Japan language, but I use the traditional language. It brings me closer with Ion. I think the city dwellers are too concerned with technology and metal than with our savior Ion, but that is not for me to decide. We all are absorbed back into his body in the end anyways. I don't think the Christians and Muslims deserve what happened to them, but it is unnatural for them to be here. It isn't natural for a European and Asiatic religion to be on this island. It spreads far and fast, and far beyond the eyes of our government that I think it's a danger to our society. Now, I don't think they deserve what's going on for them by any means, but should they really be surprised by what's going on? It's unregulated and clashes too wildly with our culture. We're a holy nation after all, founded on Ion's beliefs and desires, not on Jesus or Mohammed. No violence. I abhor violence. I just want a peaceful cleansing of the nation, that is all. I once went looking in the woods once. I heard their murmuring, their screams. I picked up my gun and traveled on foot. I was preparing for 1 or 2, not a dozen, wearing large fleshy tendrils on their persons. They were wearing the symbols of one of the nearby warlord camps, and so I began to walk away, and then fell into a pit. I felt myself near bodies. Many bodies. Dozens, maybe 100. All in various states of rottage, of worms crawling around in the eyes and maggots eating holes inside the face and the throat and God knows where. My thought attracted to them. I gripped my shotgun and hid under the bodies, praying to my Savior for forgiveness and to protect me from these barbaric monsters. They spoke in hushed whispers of the traditional language. One poked the body I lay under. I could smell her rotting corpse. Her eyes weren't there anymore, just glassy holes that used to contain humanity. A mother for one, a sister for another, a wife for another. I peeked out and say that they held flesh weaponry, black-red tendrils popping out of their backs, revealing their skeletons and organs and everywhere else. I aimed for one of these backs, hoping to strike a heart or other vital organ. I aimed and fired, blowing not only his brains out but his heart and skeleton as well. I ran as far as possible, occasionally firing back as a warning. Their weapons worked best in close range, but were ineffective in longer ranges. I got inside my house and didn't come out until morning. I slept with a shotgun. I went to the police that morning in the city. They checked the pit. There wasn't a single person without Christian or Islamic iconography in that pit. The Foundation is our protector as well as our slaver. It protects our borders but only under the auspices of keeping us in bondage. Our military isn't for protecting from other countries, but from an international agency bent on our destruction. I have heard stories of attempts to court the GOC and GARRU, but to no avail. I wonder if I'll ever see my homeland of Japan ever again, but I doubt such a possibility. Our battle with the Foundation isn't only an ideological battle over independence and centralization, but a battle over science and religion. You see, as the head of our church, I believe that the Foundation is not only a physical but spiritual force. The Foundation is the force that seeks to contain who you are, what you are. They wish to contain our religion, keep it from spreading as it should across the world. If we can destroy that force within us all that seeks to contain our beliefs, we have already won the battle. I sometimes worry that our people are too focused on an upcoming defensive battle with the Foundation. The countryside wishes for peace and their common religion, while the cities seek outside products such as phones, the internet, and other technological equipment. The Foundation is a threat to their religion and their ability to connect to the outside. I worked for the military for 2 years, and I can say, we all know a war's coming, but we don't want to admit it. If there is a war, our country will burn, I can assure you of that. Sometimes I wonder why we're here. Of course, I understand how we're here, but I don't know why we're here. Are we just trying to keep the experiment our founder had many years ago? Of our second president? Or are we trying to survive against the oppressive forces of the Foundation? I don't know. I do know what we are, at least. Enemies of the Foundation. And that binds us together. For how much longer though? I am unsure. Level 5 access only. Treaty Draft. Be it declared that, unredacted, the Foundation and the Adited Republic of Polynesia have come to the following. That the Adited Republic of Polynesia will be officially recognized by the Foundation, and be allowed the conditions of trade and self-determination under Foundation supervision. That the Foundation will, to the best of its abilities, protect the current regime of the Republic, its interests, and its people. That the Adited Republic of Polynesia, in exchange for official status as an anomalous state, will, in the case of an anomalous phenomenon, relinquish all responsibilities to the Foundation when captured. If there be an anomalous humanoid on the Adited Republic of Polynesia outside of standard anomalous capabilities, see Article 3 for normalcy standards of the Republic, the Adited Republic authorities will detain and revoke the citizenship of said anomalous humanoid and place it at the nearest Foundation site in the region. Allow the construction of Site 4036 to contain any anomalous objects, entities, etc. that may inhabit the country. Allow the Foundation to use physical or human resources in the region for the purposes of furthering containment of an item or serving Foundation needs. Signed, 05-1, 05-2, 05-4, 05-5, 05-6, 05-8, 05-9, 05-10, 05-11, 05-12, 05-13. President of the Adited Republic of Polynesia.